Well, welcome to another episode of In Love with the Finks. And before we get started, I just want to let you all know that this is an unusual podcast. So many podcasts have to have session after session, week after week. We do ours whenever we feel like it. So it's not here to make money. It's not here to set the world on fire. This is for friends and family. So it's been a while since the last episode, but hey, that's In Love with the Finks.
And today's episode is about our driving in our car mishaps. We're calling it On the Road Again.
Can't wait to get back on the
road again.
Willie, have nothing to worry about, man. Well, let's start with our youth. And in our youth, if I'm not mistaken, we had different approaches to the way we drove. For instance, my first car was a 56 Chevy. Now, I want to say 56 because it's not 56. But in Cincinnati, there was a brand new expressway called the Cross County Highway. So there were no cops on. I went on there 100 miles an hour. My 56 Chevy, though, had rust flying off of it. I could see the rust flying off of it. But that's one. I think the other one is that it's kind of weird. I actually had an accident when I wasn't in the car.
Remember you telling me that story? Yeah, only you could have an accident when no one was in the car, right?
It took a lot of skill and talent. I parked the car on a hill in Cincinnati close to the university. And I went inside to party with some friends. And we're in about 5 minutes. And all of a sudden we hear crash, bang, boom. And go outside. My car hit another car. I wasn't in it, but I left it in park.
Left it in park or in drive?
Actually, I left it in drive. I meant to leave it in park.
Okay, all right.
In my mind, it was in park, but in reality, it was in park.
Okay. Well, let's see. My mishaps of my youth. Actually, this could have been a terrible, terrible mishap. You know, my first car was a 1963 Volkswagen Beetle, sky blue, loved it. And of course, we had all the frozen ponds in Massachusetts. And we had a friend who had a farm, and there was a frozen pond, and we were having an outdoor winter skating party. And someone said, how about if we spin donuts? And that's taking a car out on a frozen pond and letting it go in circles because it's on ice.
Yeah.
Well, my Volkswagen Beetle was the lightest and the smallest of the cars. So I actually drove out in a frozen pond in Massachusetts and spun donuts in the car. And the ice never broke. I never drowned. The car didn't drown. And it was crazy, but it worked.
And this is from a girl who was afraid of everything. And you weren't afraid to go out on the ice, spin donuts, and not worry about your car falling in.
Oh, I was worried. I was just having fun. And then, of course, the other driving incident growing up, learning to drive in Massachusetts, which made you crazy, I remember, was I would never use my turn signal. And you would say to me, Cindy, you got to use your turn signal, in Ohio and Cincinnati. And I'd say, I never use my blinker. In Massachusetts, if you used your blinker, that was a sign of weakness. So why would you use your blinker and let the other person know what you were going to do? So it was only you who really taught me to use my turn signal over these years.
I think you and the blinker helped generate a new term, masshole. Well, now that we're talking about our early driving, I think we also need to talk about, before we get into tickets, getting out of tickets, because I think I was pretty good at that. My guess is you were too. The first time I got out of a ticket, I was going to college at GW, George Washington in DC, driving home for Thanksgiving. And I had a friend, a young woman that was driving with me because, first, it was her car. And secondly, she also lived in Cincy. So we're finally crossing into Ohio. And I'm feeling so good. I kind of gun it a little bit. And
awful sound and feeling, isn't it?
Oh, man, your stomach goes into your butt. I pull over, and this girl started crying her eyes out. And it was amazing. The cop let us go.
Oh, yeah, that's something we young women back in the 70s knew to do. I had a similar situation, only it wasn't a fake crying. It was legitimate crying. I used to drive from Bowling Green, Ohio, from graduate school back to Massachusetts, mid to late 70s. And I had read a story about people that were posing, men that were posing as police officers to get women to pull over, and then they'd rape them. So I'm driving on the Pennsylvania Turnpike late at night. It is dark, and their car comes behind me, but it's an unmarked car, but it has one of those sirens on the top, and it's trying to pull me over. Well, I refuse to stop. I'm convinced it's one of these fake cop rapists. So I go for many, many, many miles. This supposed police car is following me. Finally, it pulls in front of me and kind of stops me. I had to stop. And a guy came out and I was scared, I'm crying. I asked for his proof, identification, and he showed me that he was really a police officer dressed as police. I'm crying, and I told him the story about I didn't pull over because of these men that are supposedly cops and raping women. And I was really scared because, as I say, he'd been chasing me for a long time, and I got out of the ticket also.
Whoa. So you use your feminine guile to get out of the ticket. And I got to tell you, I didn't have very much guile, so I ended up getting a lot of tickets. But before we go into those tickets, I think our adventures in driving started with our honeymoon. You remember that?
Of course, I remember that. You mean leaving the wedding?
Well, actually, speaking of memory, yeah, I remember now. Yeah, we were leaving the wedding.
And Ellen, maid of honor, said, we had 2 cars there at the Stonebridge Inn. She said, which car are you leaving in? Because they wanted to decorate it with cans and all the stuff. And I said, oh, well, Chuck's taking his car and I'm taking my car.
And we drove off on our wedding with 2 separate cars. How many people do that? How many people get married, go on their honeymoon, but drive off in 2 separate cars?
I know. I remember Ellen saying, you're leaving the honeymoon in 2 different cars. Who does that? No one does that. Of course, we left one car at Gertie's house, so we ended up going to Boston in the same car, but we left the wedding venue in 2 separate cars.
It's not the destination, it's the process.
Exactly.
Right? Well, now, speaking of tickets, I want to start with what I think is my all-time most elaborate ticket ever. I had stomach issues and I had to go and get a stool specimen into the hospital. So, you know me, I have a little bit of
heavy foot
and also a little bit of concern about health issues. So they both got me going really fast. So I'm driving on the expressway. I get pulled over by a cop. He says, why are you speeding? I pull out the stool specimen and I said, because of this shit.
I have to rush it to the hospital.
Yeah, exactly.
And they got to rush it in.
And it worked so well, I got a big ticket.
Right, as you deserve.
Oh,
yes.
Well, speaking of big ticket, that was one of many. I have to admit, you're right. I have a very heavy foot. Although I'm trying to bring it down, but I've had a heavy foot.
I know.
So I can tell you about each ticket, but I think it's better to give you a summary. After maybe my 7th or 8th ticket, I think they actually knew me because they would pull me over and say, hey, Chuck, you know the drill. Let's see your license and all that stuff. So I guess, I had enough that they must have known me.
Yeah, you were a frequent customer.
And one of those tickets, I guess the points were ratcheting up on my driver's license. So they said if I got one more point, I'd have to go to a driving school in Lebanon, Ohio, which is like 35 miles north of Cincy. But I'd have to go to the driving school. So I kicked in my best behavior for the next couple of years, and I got nary a ticket. But I made up for it after that.
I remember that because the driving school would have been like every Saturday for months. And then having had to go to that driving school, they would have told the insurance company and the insurance rates would have been sky high. So yeah, you squeak through not going to driving reform school.
I didn't go to driving reform school, but I almost got caught up in that mayhem that you were just talking about. We were driving to Charlottesville, Virginia with a couple of friends. And to do that from here, the only way you can get there is I-81 through Wythe County. Otherwise, the town is Wytheville, W-Y-T-H-E-V-I-L-L-E. It has a reputation for being an enormous speed trap.
We didn't know that at the time.
Didn't know that at the time. So we're coming back and I'm driving through. I'm probably doing 85 and a 70. And yeah, I deserve the ticket. But it's not fair. The whole system is against the driver. The lawyers are in cahoots. The judge is in cahoots. The police are in cahoots. So that little ticket ended up costing me more than $700 to keep it off my record because I had to pay an attorney there. So my warning to everybody is drive slow as you go through Wythe County.
I remember when we came home from that trip, like 2 days later, we had all this mail. Someone said you could get your odometer or speedometer checked. And you could, speak to this lawyer. It was such a scam. And then we saw there were pages and pages and pages of people on the internet saying Wythe County's like the biggest ripoff ever for speeding tickets.
I had a friend whose daughter was arrested in Wythe County. She didn't have the money to pay bail, so she was in jail. And there was a pregnant woman in a cell with her, and she was going into labor. They wouldn't let her out.
Yeah,
so
crazy.
Stay away from Wythe County.
Well, I do think the best ticket, I don't know if you got out of it or got a ticket, but the best driving mishap was we were boating in Florida on the Intercoastal Waterway. Sunday morning, we're on a trip down there. We got a Boston whaler. You're driving it. All of a sudden, there's the marine police pulling you over in a boat for speeding. And you said to me, it's you. You're drinking a beer. It's before noontime on a Sunday. You're drinking a beer. That's why they're pulling us over. But it was the manatee-free zone, and you were speeding.
Well, that might be true, but I got one on you. We were at Lake Kiwi, and you were on a jet ski with our son Greg. You both were on jet skis, and a storm was coming in. So you were coming in, and a siren kicks off, and we thought for sure, you thought for sure it was because of the storm, but it wasn't.
No, we weren't on different jet skis. Greg and I were on the same
Okay.
jet ski because we only had one jet ski.
Okay.
And we had been on an island partying and stuff. And you had wanted to go back to the cottage. So it took you back. And Greg and I were hanging out on the lake. And yes, the bad storm came up. And I said, well, we better get in quickly. A thunderstorm's coming up. And I was going as fast as I could to get back. And yes, all of a sudden the lake police are with me. And I'm like saying to Greg, oh, that's so nice. They're following us to our dock to make sure we're home safely. But it wasn't speeding. They pulled me over because they wanted to see that I had a whistle. You had to have a whistle and you had to have a fire extinguisher in the hold of the jet ski. Well, we did have a whistle and we did have a fire extinguisher. But at that point, they were buried under like 18 empty beer cans. And I was afraid to start taking all the beer cans out. So I just said, sorry, sir, I don't have a whistle or a fire extinguisher with me, but I'll make sure I get one. And he handed me a koozie, a beer koozie that said, do not drive, do not boat and drink. And I never got a ticket.
And you think he didn't see the beer cans? Well, I don't know about that. He may have seen the beer cans, but we do have different ways of driving.
Oh, very much.
And then
so.
there came a time where both of our sons needed to learn how to drive. And if I'm not mistaken, we got so confusing for them that they said one of you have got to drive. Can you fill in the blanks?
I don't know if it was Drew or Greg. My guess is it might have been Greg. But yeah, you would take Drew out for a driving lesson, and then a few days later I'd take him out. We did the same with Greg. We both made sure we would teach him to drive. And I think it was Greg said, look, either one of you or the other. It can't be both of you because Dad told me to drive this way, and I do. And 2-3 days later, you take me out, and Mom, you tell me to drive this way, and it's completely different. So one of you needs to take charge of the driving lesson.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but we were talking about spinning donuts. That's how I taught you how to drive. We went to an ice-covered road or a parking lot. I told him to spin donuts so we could learn how to get out of it.
Right,
so, part of that was
right.
There. But
then there was it's amazing. I'm even alive to tell this story today. It shows my white old lady privilege. Remember, we went to Folly Beach outside of Charleston.
Yeah.
And we weren't staying right on Folly Beach, but we would drive to Folly Beach, and there was a sign saying you can park on the beach road, but the tires have to be off of the road, and they had a line. And I had been driving, and I made sure I got out of the car, made sure the tires were not anywhere over the line. I was parked legally. Had the nice day on the beach, and then we come back. What do I see?
See a ticket.
I see a ticket on my car for parked in the road. And I knew I wasn't parked in the road. So being the logical, evidence-based person that I've always been, remember, I walked up and down the road seeing which cars had tickets and which ones didn't have tickets. And only out-of-state cars had tickets. So I knew it was a scam. So then what did I make you do?
You made me drive to the police station. And you got out.
And you stayed in the car
in
front of the police station. I went into the Folly Beach police station.
If I may interrupt. Somebody had to come up with bail money. That's what
or the getaway car, right? But anyway, I walked into that police station waving the Folly Beach ticket. It was only like a $35, $40 parking ticket. And I'm like, you people should be ashamed of yourselves. You know this is a scam. I was parked illegally and I had a cell phone photo. Remember, we took a cell phone picture. And I was parked illegally and only the out-of-state cars have tickets. You know that's a scam. Only, ticketing the out-of-state cars. And they kept going, sorry, ma'am, you have to come back a week from Friday to talk to the judge. And I said, I'm not going to come back a week from Friday because I'm out of state. And they thought I was a funny, crazy old lady. But imagine if I had been black, I'd have probably been shot dead.
Exactly. I couldn't believe you go in there. I'm thinking, how is she going to handle this? And when you come back and told me, I couldn't believe it.
Well, I also said to them, they were so short-sighted. I said, for a $40 ticket, you are going to lose hundreds and hundreds of dollars in our tourist money because we're never coming back to Folly Beach. And we never have.
And if anybody's listening or watching, you're now in that loop too.
And then, of course, there was the maybe a year or two right after we had moved here to Asheville in '08, late '08, where you had a lot of little accidents.
Well, here's the issue. I think it's totally unfair when a mailbox moves right in front of your car at the last minute.
Jumps out at you.
And then a guardrail did the same. So, yeah, I don't know if it was really my... Okay.
Several mailboxes jumped out and hit you within a year.
Yeah, but you know what? With all this stuff about my weird driving, my tickets, I have to have a claim to fame here. Because when we drove internationally, I was the driver.
You always are, yeah.
2 times that I remember well. Gibraltar. The Rock of Gibraltar. We're driving through these really tiny roads, and all of a sudden they end. I had to turn around. You're going,
No, you did well. I could not have driven there. They were mountainous roads by the sea.
And then we're driving in Ireland. We go with our friends Bruce and Beth. And in Ireland, if you're not familiar, you're lucky. Their highways are like 2-lane roads with bushes on both sides creeping in, so you can hardly pass. Yeah. And it's really a 1-lane road. Yeah. Well, our friend Bruce and Beth, and Beth were with us, you and me. Everybody was chicken to drive. So I volunteered.
You did. And it was funny there because the roads were so narrow and there were walls and bushes and everything. Almost all the cars, the side view mirrors left and right were gone.
Right.
And you drove that rental car through all those small little roads in Ireland and never, I don't think, never ruined the rental car's side view mirrors.
What was left of them. No, it didn't ruin that. We got through. And once again, folks, now it may seem like I'm a bad driver because of all these stories we're telling. I am an excellent driver. And that got us through Europe twice.
Okay, so we hope you've enjoyed the follies, the driving and car mishaps.
The fabulous Fink follies behind the wheel.
And see you next time with In Love with the Finks.
Bye.